Hi, YouTube. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about um, racism, like Asian racism, from my experience. And, due to a lot of the hate crimes that have been happening that, funnily enough, are not even considered hate crimes or racially charged. Um, and I had heard from a police friend that it actually takes a lot for a crime to be considered racially biased. And many times, even though all of the evidence points towards it, they are still not considered such. Um, but let's then not dwell upon the label of it being called a racial hate crime. Let's just call it hate, like general hate, general racism, um, and maybe what that looks like, because I think we're getting a lot of attention now due to coronavirus and the pandemic, and it is really awful because this is global. And it reminds me a lot of what brown people had to go through during 9/11. That, oh my gosh, terrorist attacks are everywhere, and you're a terrorist, and you're a terrorist. And I think what happened at that time, and I was very, very young. I think I was like 11 or so, 12 maybe. And I was in junior high school when the 9/11 attacks happened. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that is terrible, but what can I do? I mean, I'm like a kid. Um, and I think the most I was able to do was like share posts to like stop the hate. And I think I'd always been someone who was very social justice driven. And now I'm older, um, and I don't have a platform or anything, but I figured now's as good a time as any to start sharing my voice. Um, Asian racism has been happening for a very long time, and I think it's cloaked in many, many different disguises, if I'm following that correctly. Um, from a very young age, as soon as I hit puberty, I would say I started to get noticed quite a bit. Um, And every time walking down the street, like starting from, I have to say, the age of like 12 or 13, I would get catcalled, but it was like always ni hao or ching chong, or some like uh, something would get thrown out there, where they would try some form of the language first, uh, to try to get your attention. Um, a pickup line is always like, "Do you speak English?" Which is, oh my gosh, or you speak English so well, which is another one. Um, there's a lot of microaggressions. So at its very best, it is at its very best, you are portrayed as an object of desire. And at its very worst, I've been spit on, I've been kicked, uh, usually after rejecting in advance. I was kicked on a bus once, when someone was trying to talk to me and I had my headphones in. I knew they were talking to me because you always do. I mean, I used to walk down the streets with my headphones in, which now, uh, after the London um, abduction incident, uh, I know not to have my headphones in, but I used to keep my headphones in to keep from hearing all the things people were saying to me and about me as I was walking down the street. Um, so it's so interesting that now it's like maybe I should keep one ear in and one ear out, just so I can keep myself safe from all the verbal abuse, but also safe from attacks. I don't know. Um, and yeah, being spit on. So and this is like pre-COVID. I remember very clearly someone like walking. I was walking down the street. They were walking in the opposite direction, and just out of nowhere felt a glob of spit like on my shoulder. Um, and another time. So it's not it's not happened just once where I was just walking down the street and someone who was riding their bike zooming down the street just like spat at me. Um, and I mean, who knows? I didn't see the person, so maybe they knew me and I had done something to them, but more likely I didn't do anything. And it was because of my race or my identity, some part of my identity that had, you know, struck their core enough to make them feel like they had to do something like that. And then COVID hits, right? So we get this COVID-19 pandemic. And within the first few weeks, I had already known that something terrible was going to happen. But it was just like always building at the surface. And I remember going home one day, just taking the subway. I'm in New York, by the way. And people were moving away from me on the train. Yet, and this was before, masks were being mandated, um, uh, a person was sitting as I was standing. It was pretty crowded. And again, it was like the first few weeks that this was happening. So people weren't really sure what to do. Yeah, I don't think we even knew it was like airborne at that time. Um, and they had just open mouth coughed at me, and they've been coughing like the whole time. So I knew I needed to like move away or something, but like there was no space. And if you had ever been on uh, a New York City subway train, you would know, like, we are packed in there like sardines. You can't even turn around. Um, and nothing happened to that person. That person was white, and therefore, I I would say the rhetoric there was like they probably don't have coronavirus, but if, let's say, for instance, I coughed, I'm sure there would have been a problem. And so I remember like people telling each other that we had to like stifle our coughs and just don't appear sick. And boy, was I glad when we had to move remote. And so once in this remote world, I actually left my previous job and now I'm in a fully remote uh, job, and I'm happy that I am so protected. And I see these four walls every single day, which is which stinks, but is almost better than me having to travel to and from work every day. I can't even imagine the people that have to do that. And I think about, there's just so much fear, right? I fear for my sister who's a nurse, and she's just so sweet and kind, and I would never want anything bad to happen to her, just in general. But now it's like she's out there trying to save people's lives, and I know that there are slurs being thrown at her, that people are viewing her a different way, um, because not only is she Asian, but she's also wearing scrubs every day of her life. So it's like doubly, doubly troubling. Um, if you're from my mom, who is, you know, older, um, and just again, the sweetest, kindest woman, Buddhist through and through, like vegetarian, and preaches kindness and caring, and like thinking that something terrible might happen to her for no reason. And that's the reality of these hate crimes. And that's why, being Asian is, it's not as easy as people may think. You might have heard that in the last, I believe it was the last year or so, research coming out saying that many of us live under the poverty line. And for a really long time, I remember when I was a kid and I was getting reduced lunch because we just weren't making a lot of money, but we were getting by. and my parents were like avid savers. And we had my grandmother who would, she would get her Social Security, and she had gone through like the naturalization and citizenship tests and everything, in order to get Social Security. And like that, the money that she was getting was like providing us with groceries, and that she would try to get meat on sale, and freeze them for months so that we could have like a little bit of meat, because most of our dishes were vegetarian for the most part, with a little bit of meat. And I never felt like I went without, but I never stopped to think about how poor we were. Um, and so that was very eye-opening, now, in hindsight. Um, and I guess it's, not only do we live below the poverty line, but a lot of us who have come over from, I guess I'm first generation here, because my parents had emigrated, from Taiwan. Education is so important to us because they know that education is the only way. Like, we're not going to get by networking. Let's be real. And so we need to climb the ladder using our education. And so I remember that I was, being taught math and words and letters before, again, like before I even entered preschool. And I was always like 3 grades ahead because my parents put me through, you know, I had to go through a lot of tutoring, um, and prep classes. Oh my goodness, those Flushing and Chinatown prep classes were like full of us. We were trying to get into those specialized uh, high schools, and I had gone into Bronx Science. And so like I think about like what my life might have been if my parents hadn't pushed me down the education route, because I am not an academic. I had always wanted to be in entertainment. And, you think about it like, and I'll go back to saying being Asian is not easy because you're right in the middle, you're this model minority, and you have people who are at the very top who don't want you to take their jobs, right? Who don't want you to, reach that top because that top is meant for them, because it's been meant for them for such a long time. uh People who have everything want to hold, they hold that precious. Then you have the people who are, and this is why I had gone to marches and protests, during the Black Lives Matter movement, because you need to, like, you have to form these allies. But the reality of it is you have white people who are the majority at the top, right? Many of them holding leadership roles. And then you have Black and brown people who are very often being kept at the bottom, uh, due to their skin color, right? They don't have as many opportunities. They're like, there's this redlining, there's gerrymandering, there's, so like they can't get the vote, they can't get the homes, they can't get into the schools that they want to, they can't get even the education that they want to. And you have like Asians kind of stuck in the middle who are not welcomed in either space unless we assimilate. And so you have people who are coming over who, might have, my parents got lucky because the school, district that I was in growing up, it was like it was on the up and up. And so by the time I had graduated out of like that elementary school, I think it was like one of the top in Queens. But they just happened to have gotten pretty lucky with the location they were in. And there are others. And so all my life, I had to assimilate to being more white and really try to condemn a lot of like the Asian within me, right? When I was out in society. Uh, and then when I was at home, it was a completely different story. So there's that like duality there. It's like having to live two different lives. And I'm sure there are others who maybe they were able to find housing in poor, let's just say poorer locations, um, where a lot of Black and brown people have been shunned into, and they've had to assimilate to becoming more Black and brown and more accepted by that society. Um, and so we've never had our own identity. Like, I don't think being Asian is ever accepted anywhere. Um, and then you have all of this fueling of hate, and then we have no idea. And when I heard about the Atlanta shootings yesterday, I didn't even know how to react to it, because I was like, how do I react to this? Right? Like, I don't even know how to react to it, because I was always asked to stifle who I was. For the longest time, I knew I needed to go to therapy, and I didn't even do that because I didn't even know what I would talk about. Right? Because if anyone's grown up with a tiger parent, they know that you do not have time to think about you. You have time to go to classes. I took piano, I took art classes. I, like, every single day was packed. And then I went to bed, and my days were school, more school, and bed. And even on the weekends were prep school time, for like normal school hours. I think we went to, like, for like 10 to 2 or something like that. Um, and that was like Saturdays and Sundays. So you didn't have time to think about yourself and your thoughts and your feelings and how you felt about everything, because you were programmed to succeed and climb the ladder and do well. And uh, also, let me mention, we don't put our parents in homes, we take care of them. And a lot of times we are their social security. We are their, we're their where their life savings, where the ones that are, your that filial piety, from like Confucianism, that never went away. It's respect your elders all the way, and I think that's why a lot of these hate crimes are boiling our blood, because how can you hurt our grandmas and grandpas? uh, we do everything to protect them, and our family connections are so close. Like, why, they go through so much. And our grandmas and grandpas, like my grandma and my grandpa, went through World War I and World War II. They were born in 1918, my grandfather. And they went through so much crap. Oh my gosh, so much, like the rape of Nanking. Um, you know, when Japanese soldiers were infiltrating and taking the women. Um, and my grandma was like hiding in the mountains. And so they come from that to America, a place where they feel safe. They found their own communities. It's like how a lot of the Irish and Italians had come here and had, like, they lived in the tenements, but they were around their communities. And so, like, we formed all of these communities, um, and they felt safe with their people. And now you have outsiders coming in of all races, not just white people. You have, like, white people, Black people, brown people coming in to the communities, um, and hurting our grandmas and grandpas. Uh, and so there's so much to unpack. I can't even begin to understand or start to parse out, like, next steps. I can't even begin to process what's happening to me and how I feel about all of this, much less act. I don't know. I mean, I know that there are protests going on, but it's like, what's the goal? I think the goal is for everyone to have equity, for people to be taught that, uh, judgment does not start at the surface, that racism is bad. Like, I don't even know how elementary or like the foundation. And I was listening to a few videos and things like that. And, America we just never, and I'm an instructional designer, so it's like you think about performance improvement and root cause, and it's like we never figure out the root cause, right? We never ask ourselves, Americans, America as a whole, like we or the government, I don't know who's in charge. Uh, we don't we don't think about what the root cause of the issue is. What is the core of the issue? It's not just about Asian Americans. I mean, it's about Asian Americans now. It's trending now. But 6 months ago, it was about, you know, Black Americans for African Americans. And 10 years ago, it was about Brown Americans. Um, and so this is just going to end like, and we're all pitted against each other, right? So like even when I was going into those marches, I wouldn't have gone by myself. I went with friends. I went with friends who were Black and Brown, um, to make me feel like because I also felt like, I don't have a right to be here. I don't belong. But I think when we are fighting for others, we all belong. Or I would invite white people and Black people and brown people to fight with me, um, if I were to take a stand for Asian Americans. And so I guess, I don't have a conclusion. And when I do, I will post that too. But um, this is just a rant about how I'm feeling, what I've been through. I guess this is a bit of my processing space too. I don't know if anybody finds it helpful, but if you do, please let me know. And I know that this is not a normal, I just clicked record and started talking, and there have been no edits, which could be, it's probably terrible, and I'm probably never going to watch this, uh, but if it helps someone, um, then that makes me happy, and that's all I want to do, is to help people. So thanks for listening.